A year ago on the Scotch-Irish thing and left it there to perish in the snow. The master taught King's English with cane and skate and roar. If you spoke the local dialect, he stood you on the floor. And what are you grinning about now? I'm no girnin, no va, brought out the cane again, until the local dialect was washed right down the drain. A bit survived still here and there, oh aye, among boys that had no time for school. We calves to feed and turf to one, and you man put in a crap. The education far away, they owned no horse and trap. They took down the fiddle now and then and played as no how to while away an evening hour when they fed their horse and cow.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to meet the pair of you here today and for confirming to me that the Hamley tongue and all these traditions are alive and well yet in the lagging.
The most barbarous part of the kingdom. That's how Raphoe's Bishop George Montgomery described the area to James I at the beginning of the 17th century. But he did offer the king a solution: education. The bishop wanted free schools that would encourage learning and loyalty. King James was persuaded, and the first master was appointed for a new royal school in Donegal in 1618. Back then, the area around Raphoe was the most populated part of the northwest, so it made sense to move the school from Donegal town to here. Well, that was the 1660s, and the school is still at the heart of this community. Sadly, it's been quite a while since my own school days, so I've enlisted some help to show me round, from Kelly, Lucy and Jade.
So this used to be your dining room?
Ah, what is it now?
It's the meeting room now, so...
Oh, very good. From meeting to eating. Terrible. So Lucy, tell me, what's it like to be part of a school like this?
Well, I'm now in my last year of this school, going into my leaving cert, and I came from a school from a really tiny school into such a big school. There was only 20 students in my primary school, and then all of a sudden I was thrown into 500 students in one school.
Oh, goodness. This school was built in 1737 to replace the original building. It now serves as an accommodation house for more than 30 students. Well, Kelly, it is such an old building. Do you get a sense of history when you're in this place?
Yeah, this building actually was built in 1737, so yeah, it's extremely old. You can see the architecture and the big walls and the big windows and that kind of thing, but there's a real sense of connection between the past and the present.
Jade, in terms of the academic and learned
side,
do you feel like you're part of that history here?
Of course, you like every day you're walking through the corridors in the school and there's photos up everywhere, even in this building itself, from past pupils, hockey teams. We've got big hockey culture in the school itself, so it's really lived throughout the thing, through the course of the school. Now you're part of that as well, so it's almost like you're part of something greater than your own education.
These days, the historic Royal School is known as the Royal and Prior, after its amalgamation with another Protestant school. With nearly 600 pupils, they've expanded into new premises where they continue to play an important and distinctive role in the life of this part of Donegal. The Royal School brought the tradition of hockey to Raphoe, and they've been playing it here for about 100 years. They're the only school team in Donegal, and their closest competitor is Cookstown. Raphoe takes its name from the Irish Fort of the Huts, a reference to the monastery founded by St Columba in the 6th century. The Church of Ireland Cathedral occupies the same site today. Over time, it became a major spiritual centre and is still thought of as Europe's smallest cathedral city. In the early 17th century, the town got its first Protestant bishop. Coming from a powerful and influential Scottish family, George Montgomery encouraged large numbers of Scots to settle in Donegal. As a result of his influence, the Anglican Church here came to be ruled by Scottish ministers. The settlers, however, were mostly Presbyterian, something which would create tension in the future.
Dominating the countryside, this castle was built for the fighting bishop, John Leslie. Involved in many of the conflicts which engulfed Ireland in the 17th century, he was a favourite of King James. A leading figure in the established church, he was no friend to either Catholic or Presbyterian. So he was from Scotland, and his predecessor Andrew Knox was from Scotland, and his predecessor George Montgomery was from Scotland.
There's a pattern emerging.
There is, but they were all established church bishops.
Very much so.
However, the Scottish settler community here were overwhelmingly not established church.
The local community here, the established settlement here, was predominantly Scots Presbyterian. Bishop Leslie was putting down the Presbyterian faith as well as the Roman Catholic faith, and in actual fact he had Presbyterian ministers, dissenting ministers at the time, arrested and taken to Lifford jail for non-compliance of his direct orders not to preach, telling the people here he is here to stay, the established church is here to stay, and the established church is the only church that will be recognised by the state.
Leslie was also a fierce fighter who had gained military experience in Europe, skills he put to good use when he led a local Protestant militia known as the Lagan Army in defence of this area during the conflict in 1641. But just a few years later, this Scottish royalist found himself on the wrong side when Cromwell's forces came to Donegal.
The Lagan Army were predominantly Presbyterian and subsequently loyal to Cromwell.
Leslie's men turned on him in a sense, didn't they?
When Sir Charles Coote actually came and besieged this castle for the Cromwellian forces, Bishop Leslie knew that the time was up and he gave in at that stage. Cromwell allowed him to stay here, to live quietly, not to perform any services from the Anglican prayer book. Then, at the Restoration, King Charles restored Bishop Leslie to his bishopric here in Raphoe, and with the generous pension given him by the King, he purchased land at Blasloch in County Monaghan. So the Castle Leslie estate, the same family descended from Bishop Leslie that live there today.
The strong walls of Raphoe Castle are a reminder of how turbulent and volatile the 17th century was in Ireland. Just a few miles from Raphoe, in the nearby village of Convoy, you can find other traces from those times. Flanked by two towers, you can still see the rough-hewn coat of arms of the Montgomery family on the gateway to Convoy House. Related to the first Protestant bishop of Raphoe, they were just one among many Scots families that he encouraged to settle in this part of Donegal during the early part of the 17th century. Hidden from the road among these ancient trees and overgrown with ivy, the defensive wall that surrounded the Montgomery's plantation home has withstood the test of time. This is incredible. Some 400 years later, the fortified house still stands. It's so easy to imagine the roof, the slates and the timber work. There are some very, very small openings in the wall here for, I suppose, for defensive purposes. Maybe an external chimney, fireplace in the far gable wall. What an imposing building this would have been in its day. And it's miraculous that it's still here in such remarkable condition. The Montgomerys became one of the most influential families in Ulster, and the branch who lived here in Donegal were no different. So what this site really shows is maybe 200 years of change right here in this tiny wee church, place of worship that's been incorporated into the Bon Wall. It just captures a stepping stone, almost an in-between stage. They don't need to defend themselves anymore. They're heading in a socially upward direction, and perhaps this is the place where they give thanks for that change. And just past the old Bon Wall is the 18th century house, a testament to the Montgomery family's status and success. What is this amazing document that you've just unfolded here?
And this is a markets grant, so for Ulster and Convoy, and this is an actual legal deed, and it's made from vellum, and this is the seal that goes with the deed, and it dates back to George III. As you can see, that's a picture of him there, and this is the original coat of arms from Convoy. So it's basically granting Alexander Montgomery permission to have markets, actually 6 markets in this area.
And this is the Alexander Montgomery who was born and lived in this very house as MP for Donegal.
That is the same Alexander, Old Sandy as he was known. He was in one way a pillar of the community. I mean, he was involved in the yeomanry. He was an MP in Grattan's Parliament. But he had a reputation for being, quite an aggressive character and a duellist, apparently. So he was involved in duels, which were common enough among the landed gentry at that time. But he seemed to have a particular fondness for them.
Despite the duelling, Old Sandy, Alexander, was a respectable MP, loyal to the crown. But his brother, Richard, was a very different story. A rebel soldier who became the first American patriot. George Washington mourned his death in battle as a great loss to the new republic. What I find fascinating about this is that this is the king giving Alexander Montgomery permission, and of course just a few years ago, Alexander's brother, Richard, was fighting against that very king and became a great hero of the American Revolution.
He did, and the fact that General Richard Montgomery is a hero in America, in the USA now, and for his role in the War of Independence in America, in the colonies, is an amazing factor that I don't think most people in Ireland realise, how famous he is now. He died in battle, so that was an amazing story in itself.
The present owner, Dubliner Jerry Maguire, has lived here for close to 20 years, restoring the 18th century house and grounds, and he plans to share the almost forgotten story of this historic property with the public.
Are those Montgomery stories an important aspect of the appeal?
They will be, yes. Especially the story of Richard Montgomery. We've had Americans that have called in to see the house, the plantation house, and a lot of them were, I'd say they were probably ex-military people, men in particular. And, he seems to be very highly regarded.
What was it like when you discovered all these Montgomery stories you didn't know about?
Up to that, had never heard of Montgomerys or wasn't that interested in history, really. But I'm nearly an amateur historian now.
He was here and played where we are today.
Yeah, and actually farmed in the wall garden and round the fields before he went back up to join the rebels and to fight against the British. But fascinating when you think of it, that he was here. I often think of that when I walk through the woods. Has Richard Montgomery walked these paths? Because there is woodland walks that have been here, since the beginning of the house. And I often think of that.
The old Scottish church in the centre of the town was built in 1860 for a second wave of Scottish planters in Raphoe, and it seems an unlikely sporting venue, but it's produced a whole generation of national, European and world-class athletes. There hasn't been a congregation here since 1949, but the McGee family have transformed this place into a centre of excellence for badminton. Two members of the family, Chloe and Sam, are European medalists and both have represented Ireland at the Olympics. And it all started with their father. Sam, when did you start playing badminton?
I was 18 around that age. I was late starter now.
Late starter. But you produced this great line of badminton players, so did you get them started young?
They started young. Chloe was 5 and Sam was around 5. Josh and Daniel, they were all young when they started. They got a better chance than I got.
And why badminton?
Well, you know, tennis was popular around here, hockey, but we have a damp climate and days you got always wet, and the badminton you could play at any time.
So you're saying that this great history of badminton was born out of, pragmatism? You didn't want to get too wet?
That is right. Got very, very popular. Well, more so since Chloe qualified for the Olympics.
That must have been an incredibly proud moment for you.
It was I. It was just a proud time, all right.
What was it like when you got the phone call? I hear you said you'd buy her a car if she got into the Olympics.
I told her she passed her driving test and qualified for the Olympics, so we'd get her a car, and I had to do it. I didn't think she was going to do both.
All the McGee siblings are involved at top levels in Irish badminton. Miriam is Donegal champion and runs the club in Raphoe.
I'm one of 8 of the McGees, so Dad would have brought us all up as children up here to the hall. He very much would have driven the passion for badminton in all of us. I say, in Donegal they give them rackets instead of dummies. So Chloe started playing especially, and Sam at very young ages. Chloe's now our triple Olympian, Sam and Joshua are European champions, and my niece Rachel there is playing at an international level as well.
How competitive was it in your house growing up, by the way?
It still is. I took over coaching the junior club when I was 16 years old, so that's 18 years ago. When I took over the junior club, we had about 12 members. So you're looking at now something that's 70 members, and now my daughter's playing. And it's the same with a lot of our club members. Their fathers and mothers played, and then they're playing, and now they're bringing their kids into the junior club. So it's very much a tradition in here in Raphoe, where the club is very much a family and a community, and we all work together. It's a building steeped in history, but it's steeped in atmosphere as well. It's the floor here, it really does suit the sport very well. The height, everything's just excellent for badminton, but it also just has that buzz. If you were in here on finals night, this hall is packed. There is standing room only, and the atmosphere is just electric. The amount of noise that's going on, it sometimes doesn't feel like it's a church, but no, you do remember, and as I say, the outside of the building is so impressive that it keeps you in mind of what it was, and it's great to have that history there.
I'm sure there's still a lot of praying goes on in here. Please let me win. Let me win.
There is a lot of praying, and hopefully not too much cursing.
Sporting traditions run deep in Raphoe, but so does music. Here and in many towns in this area, you can hear the proof of that as the evening draws in. Highland pipes have been played here since the 1930s, but it was the forming of the Ulster Scott's juvenile pipe band that reconnected these young folk with a love of piping that had been in their families for generations. Made up of young people aged between 9 and 15, the band was formed in 2012, and it supports and develops young musicians throughout the province of Ulster. Great. Can I play pipes now? Is that it?
Yeah, no.
You'll be better at it than me, so what does yours sound like? My goodness. Next, so what is it like being part of a piping family?
Well, I just kind of grew up in it, so I know no different.
Right.
It was always like Daddy drumming about the house and going to competitions and everything, and drumsticks lying around, so...
And did his parents play, do you know?
Granda played, and
My
his two
goodness.
brothers, they played as well.
Really?
4. When I would come over into Raphoe to do a workshop, I would say to the kids, is anybody involved in pipe bands? Now, if you were to do the same thing in Belfast, you would get no hands going up. But you come over into Raphoe and you would say, is anybody involved in pipe bands? And there could be 16 kids out of 20.
There's just so many of them here, and it runs deep within just everyday life. The whole idea of this programme is we get them interested in the instruments, we start teaching them. Then the next stepping stone for them is to come to the after-school classes, which effectively feed them into the juvenile band. Once they feed into the juvenile band, they start to meet other pipers from different bands.
Try and drag it along the chapter. Not your full hand.
You don't become a piper overnight. It takes 3, 4, 5 years before the bands want you. You know, you have to be at a certain standard, and that's what we are here to do. We are trying to show them the opportunities that these instruments will bring them. And obviously when they go home with a practice chanter, Granny and Grand is over the moon that the kids have decided to take this instrument up. That's a huge help for us.
You always start flourishing on your left hand, because in pipe bands we start off marching on the left foot, so everything must be on the strong beat. It's all part of style and dress, and we'll go after 2. So 1, 2, and throw. That's pretty good. That is pretty good. Yeah. There's another art involved in actually catching it, actually stopping the stick between the finger and the thumb.
Hey Sam, you've been doing this for a while yourself, so your family tradition in Raphoe Pipe Band?
Yeah, my granddad, he's always been in it since he was young, and my dad joined it, and then I started doing drum major, which is like the leader of the bands.
Okay.
Because I thought that would be a good way to get into it without actually playing music. And then, so I started that when I was 5, and I did it with my sister as well. And then as I got older, I started trying snare drumming, trying piping and all.
Well, I'm sure your family must be very proud of that honoured tradition that there is here.
My dad's at every band's practice, but my granddad tries to get to all of them, and like, he doesn't really mind just what we're playing as long as just to keep the family tradition going, you know?
Once a year, the Diamond echoes to the sound of pipes and drums as musicians from all over Donegal come together. For the juvenile pipe band, the Ulster Scots Heritage Day is a high point, a chance to show off their new skills.
We took part in Heritage Day at Raphoe, and we had the class after that, and immediately after that we had a huge uptake of new kids coming in, and that's because they've seen their friends in school out with a kilt on, marching down the street, taking part in a concert, you know, playing the bagpipes. Willie said to all the local pipe bands, you know, there is still some of these kids aren't involved in any pipe bands outside. And so we were saying to them, come down, meet them, meet the parents, try and attract them to your band.
How many do you think you've seen through the scheme so far?
There's 90 kids that we started teaching, have joined 29 different bands. But then there's other ones have their family bands, the bands that their families connected with. Grandy used to play for it, Daddy used to play for it. So they have a connection with them, and that's where they'll end up going. And hopefully they take then some friends along with them.
There's so much to Raphoe's story, from the early days of the Irish Church to the arrival of those first Scots families. Both Market Town and Cathedral City, a diamond still at the centre of life in Donegal's historic Lagan.
And we're meeting with folks that call Cullybacky their home next Sunday night, same time, 10 o'clock. On BBC Two Northern Ireland next tonight, though, following her party conference this weekend, Alliance leader Naomi Law joins Mark